You've got to know where the cash is flowing. So what a rich person is doing is controlling cash flow. So if money comes from an asset into your pocket, it's an asset. So very simply, when I was 9 years old, my rich dad said, assets put money in your pocket, whether you work or not. So by being a business owner on the right-hand side of the quadrant, you can make a lot more money and pay a smaller percentage of taxes legally. And the key word is legal. In the investor quadrant, it is possible to make millions of dollars and pay 0% taxes legally. But you've got to know the difference. One of the most important lessons my rich dad gave me, and it was called the cash flow quadrant. And what my rich dad explained to me is that there's 4 people in business. One are E's, employees. S stands for small business, self-employed, or specialist. B stands for big business, and I stands for investor. And the thing of note here is that most people who go to school are programmed for the E and the S side. For example, it was my poor dad who always said to me, son, go to school so you can get a nice, safe, secure job. And so my poor dad wanted me to be an employee. And since the time I was a kid, get a safe, secure job, steady paycheck, and benefits. You've got to know where the cash is flowing. So what a rich person is doing is controlling cash flow. So if money comes from an asset into your pocket, it's an asset. So very simply, when I was 9 years old, my rich dad said, assets put money in your pocket, whether you work or not. And very simply, liabilities take money from your pocket. So the way you know you have an asset or a liability is very simply this. If let's say you're married with 3 kids and all this stuff, and you stop working, the money coming in is money from an asset, and the money going out is money from a liability. So if you happen to have a little house sitting over here, and it's sucking cash out of your pocket every month, it's a liability. You see, on the other side of here, if you move this house over here, and every month after paying all your expenses, it puts money in your pocket, then it's an asset. So anything can be an asset or a liability. It's not real estate, it's nothing like this. You know, I write this book here, and it's been a New York Times bestseller for almost 7 years now. And every year it puts several $100,000 in my pocket, whether I work or not. That's an asset. So anything can be an asset, you know. So when I was doing this talk in Singapore, I said, how many of you can name an asset? And this woman raised her hand and said, yes, what's your asset? She says, my husband. And I said, no, ma'am, I'm talking about an inanimate object. She said, well, he's inanimate. So just think of it this way. Assets, put money in your pocket. Liabilities, take money from your pocket. So this was the big difference between my poor dad and my rich dad. My poor dad was always telling me to get a high-paying job. Now, nothing wrong with it. People like jobs and all this. And my rich dad was very simply telling me acquire assets. So when I left the Marine Corps in 1974, I had nothing, zero, no money. But I knew I had a plan. I knew what I was going to do. And the number one thing I was going to do was build my business. Second, I was going to buy real estate. And third, I was going to buy paper assets. Today, also commodities, gold, silver, oil, and gas. Okay? So all I work hard to do is build businesses, develop real estate, invest in stocks, bonds, and I have oil and gas, gold, and silver. That's what I work on. So what makes the rich rich is not the school they went to and all this, is what quadrant, what do you work in? Do you work in this, or you work in here? Okay, so this is where financial IQ starts from, is I focus my time here. I don't care if I make any money. I really have very little interest in money. I want to acquire assets. And that's what my wife and I focus on.
I didn't want to be an employee. And I said, Mom and Dad, I want to be a rich man. And I'd fight with my dad. So my mother finally said, son, if you want to be rich, my mother was a registered nurse. And she said, if you want to be rich, the richest people I know are doctors. So my mom wanted me to come over here, be a specialist or a small business person. I said, there's only one problem with that, Mom. Doctors are really smart. And she says, you got a good point there. I'm not going to be a doctor. So I went to school. I have a Bachelor of Science degree. I can drive ships and I can fly planes. I flew for the Marine Corps. But I've never used any of that education because I wanted to become a business owner. So it was my rich dad who basically said to me, become a business owner and learn to be a professional investor. And this is what financial education and financial literacy really is. Again, it starts with a financial statement. And I would say probably 95% of all college graduates don't know what a financial statement is. But I say to young people like you, there's 6 basic words to financial literacy and financial education. And the 6 words again are income, expense, asset, liability. See, I don't really care about my FICO score. A FICO score just basically registers, are you trustworthy with borrowing money? But a bank will never say, I borrow in the hundreds of millions of dollars. A FICO score, not going to get me there, okay? So one of the big differences here between these people is that it's called taxes. See, in 1943, in the U.S., the federal government passed a law that said employees had to pay tax before they got paid. So when you get your paycheck from your employer, you open it up, and voila, the government's always taken a sizable chunk of it. And the harder you work and the more money you make, the more money they take from you. So that's why it's not that good to be an employee, because you can never get ahead, because the more you work, more money you make, the greater they pay in taxes. Now, the doctors, the lawyers, and attorneys, accountants were all laughing, saying, oh, these guys, they're getting paying a lot of taxes. So naturally, the federal government changed the laws again. So in 1986 in the U.S., a thing called the 86 Tax Reform Act, and it basically took a lot of the benefits away from people who are self-employed, small business, doctors, and lawyers. So today in America, unfortunately, these guys pay the highest percentage in taxes. So these are the 4 words, income, expense, asset, liability, and the last 2 words are the words cash flow. And that's why the game is called cash flow. And the secret to being rich is not a college education, but can you control cash flow? And this is what cash flowing looks like. So this here, you need this, income, expense, asset, liability. Again, this is, you get a job. And this was my poor dad, go to school, get a job, get your PhD. And so this here is cash flow. So the income comes in, and it goes out this way. First line of expense is tax. So this is a poor person's cash flow pattern. It's not how much money you make. Most people, I don't care if you have a PhD or no school at all, but they can't control the cash flowing out through their expenses. And so that's why people like Susie Orman say, cut up your credit cards, live below your means, because you're a spendaholic.
I used to fight with my dad. By the time I was in high school, I'd just fight with him saying, I want to be an employee. I just don't want to do it. And I was flunking out of high school and all this stuff because I couldn't write, which is interesting. But so my mom finally intervened, and my mom was a registered nurse. And she says, Robert, stop arguing with your dad. If you want to be rich, go to school and become a doctor. I said, Mom, there's only one problem. She says, what's that? She says, doctors are smart. She says, you got a good point there. On the other side of it, my rich dad says to me, he says, Robert, are you basically lazy? And I said, yeah. And he says, are you incompetent? I said, yeah. And you're not very bright, are you? I said, no. He says, good, you'll do well in business here. My primary focus is to start businesses. I have a gold mining company in China, silver mining company in Paraguay. I have a lot of real estate companies, oil and gas companies. I just start businesses. I like them. Once they're up and running, the cash flows in, I go do something else. So basically that has been my philosophy since 1974. And that's where I run.
So that's a poor person. This is a middle class person's cash flow pattern. And this is where the house comes in. First thing, most kids do when they get pay raise and all that, they buy themselves a bigger house. Oh, my house is an asset. Now, who tells you that? Your real estate agent, of course, right? Because they want to give you this false sense of security while you're getting screwed. But when you look at what happens with a house, a personal residence, something I live in, the money comes in and goes out, and this is middle class, but it also goes out through a mortgage payments. Oh, but I don't have a mortgage. You still have taxes. Then you have upkeep. So money's always flowing out. So that's why your house is not an asset, is because it's taking money from your pocket. And then this here is, so I'm not saying don't buy a house, but here is a house. And I started when I was 25, bought my first house, and it was an apartment. It was an investment property. I didn't live in it. I rented it out, and it put money in my pocket. So very simple, the definition of asset and liability is not the house or this, it's cash flow. Where is the cash flowing? So as a young person, and to all millennials, or if you're old, financial intelligence is the ability to control cash flow. And that's what they don't teach you at school. They tell you to go to school, get a job. First thing is tax. You'll pay, most of your money will go out through taxes in your lifetime. And then they tell you to buy a house and a car. A car is an asset. No, a car is a liability. You got insurance, gas, upkeep, and all this. Now, if you buy a taxi car, it could be an asset. It's cash flow. We just interviewed some National Football League players who make millions of dollars in their 20s, and most of them are broke in 2 years because they can't control cash flow. Intelligence, IQ, is can you control cash flow, not your college degree. College degrees are important, but they're not going to teach you this. So the cash flow game trains you over and over and over and over again to get your money in here to get cash flow this way. If you have a job, you pay tax, but the rich get richer, because when you have asset income, taxes are less. You can get it down to zero if you want. But that's financial intelligence. But can you control cash flow?
So the problem here is this. So financial IQ is just simply how you handle your financial problems. Now you look at it this way, for many people, when they have financial problems, they get a second job. That's an employee's mentality. I don't get a second job, I start a second business. There's a difference in the mindset of how a person handles a problem, okay? The most important thing you can tell your friends is get off your butt and start your own business. Even if it's at home. Even if it's on your dining room table. Kim and I, my wife, started Rich Dad, Poor Dad on our kitchen table. And at a pizza parlor. We had a great time. But once you understand business, the moment you shift from here to here, the tax laws swing in your favor. The moment you tell a kid, go to school and get a job.
And a lot of people think they're investors, but what they're really doing is they're just giving their money to people like mutual funds, companies, and all that. So they're investing, but they're not really investors. See, the big tax breaks are on this side. The laws are pretty tight here, but this area is very, very gray. So by being a business owner on the right-hand side of the quadrant, you can make a lot more money and pay a smaller percentage of taxes legally. And the key word is legally. In the investor quadrant, it is possible to make millions of dollars and pay 0% taxes legally. But you've got to know the difference. So one of the beauties of business for the 21st century is it allows people to make the transition from the E and the S side to the B side especially. And so you can become a big business owner. And the difference between an S and a B, small business and big business, is most of these guys can't quit working. Most small business owners, if they stop working for more than a month, the business collapses. You know, they don't really have a business. Most of these people own a job. So the beauty of business for the 21st century, it allows these people to make the transition to the B side so that you don't have to keep working hard for money, and the money can actually come in passively. Then once you have your business up and running, then I always recommend you then begin investing with your excess cash, paying less and less in taxes. And that's the reason the rich are getting richer.